Hello everyone, and welcome. My name is Bob Nemick with Griffin Hammis Associates, your speaker for this topic. This is the first lecture in the ACRE web-based certificate course in community employment with a concentration in customized employment. Customized employment is the latest advancement in the development of individualized community-based employment methods for people with disabilities. In this lesson, you will learn the fundamental elements of customized employment, including the development of the process, how it differs from other methods of developing employment opportunities, and a brief overview of tools and strategies of customized employment that will be expanded upon in subsequent lessons. This lecture will provide additional information to the content and the insights you will gain from the Relias class, your readings, your discussion postings, and your assignments. The basic idea of customized employment is one person at a time. Customized employment seeks to discover each individual job seeker's personal genius and helps to connect the individual's tasks and skills with jobs that take full advantage of what the job seeker has to offer. Having a positive and open approach to life is one of the many competencies suggested in the Customized Employment Competency Model, which is one of your readings for this lesson. This positive view or perception leads to the application of practices that support people, even those with the most significant challenges, to obtain community employment. Customized employment resulted from many years of practice and learning about the most effective ways to help individuals with disabilities enter the workforce. The learning objectives for this lesson include the importance of community employment and the valued social role of being employed in our society, understanding the principles upon which customized employment is based, knowing how CE is different from other forms of employment, and finally, becoming familiar with the stages and steps of the CE process. The challenge is how to break the bonds of conventional job development strategies, like those that are based upon a sales and marketing strategy and used solely in a labor market approach, and to move toward an actual person-centered approach that puts the job seeker at the forefront of the process. Take a moment and reflect on the first 3 jobs you had. Pick one from those 3 jobs that you remember well and write down your job title. Think about the following questions. How did you get your job? What was the benefit you brought to your employer? How were you trained for your job duties? How were you supervised? What did you learn from your employer, coworker, from the work experience in general? And would you hire your younger self today if you were the employer? What we learned from previous discussions with course participants is that in general, most people often get their first jobs through personal or community connections. Who they know, who they bump into. Maybe you found that to be true too. We also find that people have little or no experience at all in the work they were hired to do, and they receive training from either their supervisor or coworkers to do the work they were hired for. What they brought to their jobs was willingness to work and to learn. Most people learn their first job duties on the job. They gained work experience by actually working, taking on unfamiliar tasks, and learned by doing. For people with significant disabilities, we often see this typical process distorted into service components that prepare people for work in a readiness model that does not take into account the simple factors that we learned from our own work experiences that started us on our career path. What we know is that for most of us, our first job was not our last job, and that we learned what we were good at doing and about the world of work by actually working in a real job for real pay. So how might we apply a natural and typical means of getting a job to helping people with significant disabilities on their career path? Customized employment is a set of new and more effective methods that were developed to address the items raised in this slide. As the baby boomers are retiring, the pool of workers who would replace them is smaller. Therefore, it makes both social and business sense to include people with disabilities in employment. Recent studies have shown that customers think more highly of businesses that employ people with disabilities. Let me give you a brief historical overview of employment and people with disabilities, ranging from the idea that people with disabilities were basically unemployable, through customized employment, which assumes that everyone is employable. It is important to note that this is a developmental progression. Each step was state-of-the-art when it was conceived, but as times change and we gain more knowledge and experience, our responses and strategies also change. Early in our service's history, institutional care was the norm. Throughout the 19th century, institutions or asylums were created to care for people who could not care for themselves or could not work. Then, in the early 1950s, families created community associations, like the Association for Retarded Citizens, and sheltered workshops as alternatives to placing their loved ones in state-run institutions. People with disabilities had a program where they could spend time, be employed, and still live at home. Deinstitutionalization in the U.S. began in the 1970s, and people who left the institutions had access to financial supports like supplemental security income and Social Security disability payments. We saw an increase in sheltered workshops during that time, but individuals were still not seen as able to perform competitive work and were paid less than minimum wage for the work they performed. Later, programs developed a series of services for individuals who were deemed the most capable of entering the competitive workforce. These programs included stages of assessment and evaluations, pre-training like work adjustment, job-seeking skills training, and various services that were designed to prepare people for work, with the final service of job placement, which occurred once a person was deemed work-ready. This continuum of readiness services did not provide the kinds of supports and services that people with more significant disabilities required to obtain and maintain community employment. So, for people who had more significant disabilities or challenges to employment, program staff determined that their disability was too severe to benefit from the programs and they were excluded from those employment services. People by the very disability label they were given would remain in sheltered work or day activity programs because they did not qualify for those employment programs. They were not ready for work. But, 1986, a concept called supported employment was written into the Federal Rehab Act that created a new approach to the employment services and supports for people with more significant disabilities that replaced the readiness model of services. Supported employment is based on the values and principles that all people can be employed, and that by altering the readiness criteria, individuals with more significant disabilities could work in community jobs with the supports necessary for success. Supported employment includes a place, then train practice, along with job coaching and ongoing support as key components to this successful model. Today, customized employment represents the current best practice in supporting people with significant disabilities and complex support needs in community employment. On this slide, you see the definition of CE that was developed by the Office of Disability Employment Policy, ODEP, at the U.S. Department of Labor. As you can see, this definition focuses on three concepts that are distinctive to customized employment. 1. The idea that employment is individualized to the job seeker. The job seeker does not necessarily fit a predetermined job description. 2. Through customized employment practices, the job comes from a relationship that is developed with an employer on behalf of the job seeker. And 3. That customized employment starts with the individual job seeker and his or her needs first, not with the employer's needs first. Further, ODEP continues its definition of customized employment outcomes. Possible outcomes are different from the wage jobs developed through customary placement programs and the labor market approach. Customized employment requires that a negotiation is used to help fit the unique needs of an individual job seeker to the needs of an employer, in ways that meet the needs of both. Specifically, customized employment outcomes can include negotiated wage jobs that result from job carving, job restructuring, job creation, or resource ownership, and also self-employment or micro-enterprises that meet the needs for a product or service in the job seeker's community. Key points are that customized employment is truly person-centered. Jobs are developed upon who the individual is, not on what's available. Ideal conditions of employment are those factors that contribute to one's success. They might be environmental, a schedule, types of tasks performed, the people the individual works with or is supervised by, etc. The more an individual's ideal conditions of employment can be met, the better the chance for success. Customized employment is based upon a mutual negotiation between a job seeker and an employer. Customized employment is actually a set of tools that follow some basic principles and assumptions about employment. Customized employment can only be done with one person at a time. It is not about vocational evaluations or testing. Although interests are important, they are not enough to get a job. Finally, CE doesn't necessarily follow labor market trends. It is not about finding a dream job, but instead finding jobs and careers that make sense for the individual. You can find employment almost anywhere, and there are unlimited ways to make a living. Although customized employment was designed for people with complex issues and support needs, these strategies can be universally applied with anyone. Customized employment is a strengths-based approach that relies on natural relationships, supports, and training that meet the individual needs of each person. Employment development practices differ from more traditional labor market approaches. CE often bypasses the human resources filters that use comparative hiring, like comparing one applicant to another or one resume to another, that tend to screen out applicants with disabilities. In other words, the process circumvents the comparison of applicants, where people with disabilities compete with other people for the same job opening. Natural relationships are used or uncovered to provide employment supports. For instance, the best job trainer will be someone who actually does the job rather than an outsider, like a job coach. Let's look at the principles that form the foundation of customized employment practices. It is these principles that differentiate customized employment from other approaches. Customized employment can only be developed for one person at a time. People are paid at least minimum wage, but the wages are usually higher. It's about helping people find jobs that fit who they are and what they know how to do and what they can learn to do with training and support. Additional principles present in customized employment ensure that work is developed, not found. The work that is developed for one person is based on that individual's interests, skills, tasks, and abilities, and not on work opportunities that a program found with businesses that have openings. All work supports are individually developed by a skilled customized employment practitioner, along with the employer. There's a focus on developing natural and typical means for learning job tasks and supports to ensure success in the long term. And all customized employment is based on negotiation. Some aspect of the job for which the person is hired, the tasks, duties, hours, needed equipment, or the product or service that the individual will provide in their employment, is also negotiated. Negotiation is critical to the successful development of customized jobs. In many cases, job descriptions don't accurately reflect the duties and functions of a job, and many businesses do not even have job descriptions. Beginning with the idea that work tasks and duties can be negotiable, and doing that as part of job creation is not a foreign concept. Everyone negotiates with their employer, whether it's about job duties, work hours, schedules, etc. In customized employment, it's important to negotiate upfront in helping to secure a job or to plan for self-employment. It occurs at the beginning, not after the fact when a poor match is uncovered. By negotiating job duties and tasks early in the process, we ensure that people can be working, doing things they enjoy, and at which they can be most successful. We are all more productive in situations that take advantage of our strengths and knowledge. Negotiation will be discussed in greater detail in a subsequent lesson on interest-based negotiation. One of the biggest obstacles people with disabilities face in employment is the subtle bigotry of low expectations. But when people are expected to work and to be productive, they usually are. There is no profile regarding the relationship of disability and employment success. The type of disability someone experiences is no predictor of what that person may be good at doing for work. There are some parents and family members who want their family member to be in a program working with people who are just like them. The reality is that no one is just like another person, and determining work based on grouping people because of a shared characteristic is no longer a tenable argument. We may share some common interests, beliefs, etc., but we are all unique individuals. We've also heard that certain types of disabilities might lend themselves to certain types of jobs, such as people with Asperger's are suited to work in IT or with computers, or people with developmental disabilities are good at janitorial work. These ideas are not only not true, but fail to be supported when good person-centered planning practices are used to uncover the unique gifts, talents, and contributions of individuals with disabilities. It might be that people with disabilities are grouped together because of fear, because of lack of choice, or because there are poor employment programs and services that do not meet the unique needs of some people. Changes in federal law require that all people with disabilities be provided the opportunity for work in the community, the practice of employment first, to ensure that people are afforded not only the opportunity for a real job in the community, but also be afforded quality programs and services that will help them achieve that. There are some who would argue that paying people with disabilities according to their productivity is a fair approach by using Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act to pay less than minimum wages to employees with disabilities. Regardless of the fact that this does not happen to people without disabilities, where their unique differences and contributions to work are seen as valued. Current arguments against the use of the 14C certificates have moved the current paradigm from a benevolent use of the certificate to one of an unfair labor practice that is long past its due to be abolished. Some agencies use a supply-side approach, a take any available job approach. Some providers will argue in favor of group placement simply because it's more convenient or economically productive for the program. There are those who argue that choice to work or not is the number one factor. However, most adults don't get to make the choice regarding whether or not to work because they have responsibilities to provide for themselves or their families. Choosing to do nothing is no choice at all. People with disabilities have been portrayed as being recipients of government benefits and welfare for far too long. This puts them in the position of being a drain on our resources and can result in viewing people as incapable of working or even as users of a broken system. Employment helps to break that paradigm by putting people with disabilities in the position of contributing to the public welfare and becoming economic assets to their communities as consumers of goods and services, taxpayers, contributors to local businesses as employees, and sometimes as business owners. Changing that is the outcome of our work. Good community-based employment services and supports, such as customized employment, help change societal expectations and views of what is possible. Families play a key role in setting the expectations for their family members with disabilities regarding employment. Families should be encouraged to teach their children how to perform many simple, ordinary tasks or expect them to contribute with family chores. These are the building blocks for learning skills that will benefit people as they begin their path to employment. All family members should be expected to have chores and responsibilities that meet the skills and abilities of each member, with ever-increasing responsibilities. No skill is unimportant, and skills build upon skills. Whenever possible, people should be exposed to as many different things that people do for a living. No matter what form of employment services and supports for people with significant disabilities we may know about and use, all of them must do these four things. 1. Assessment, what we call discovering personal genius. 2. Job development, or connecting the job seeker and employment opportunities. 3. Provide or develop the appropriate supports on and off the job to help the new employee succeed. And 4. Planning for ongoing supports and continued career development. In conventional job development or placement, these four phases are typically performed as discrete services, often with little or no connection to the other part. Once one part is completed, the other part begins. In customized employment, these four phases are integrated with one another. Discovery actually guides the job development phase because the job developer will use that information to seek out businesses and employment opportunities based upon who the individual actually is. Many of the employment support needs of the individual are identified during discovery, and they also influence the job development. As we learn more about the job seeker during the job development, employment, and support processes, their personal profile grows and changes. Customized employment clearly differs from some of the other more traditional employment services and programs that prepare people for work. Customized is not about readiness programming, but is about helping an individual with disabilities get a job. The work of the employment specialist, employment consultant, job coach, job developer, whatever the professional title, their work is to get a job for the job seeker and not to prepare the job seeker to get ready for work. Let's take a look at each of these four phases in more detail. Discovering Personal Genius, or DPG, is the Griffin-Hammes Associates version of the discovery process that you will learn about in this course. Discovery is a unique form of community-based functional assessment that requires different skills, tools, and thinking for the employment professional and uses a different mindset from more traditional assessment or evaluation practices. In fact, when we use the discovery practice, we leave behind our concept of evaluation and simply report what we observe through personalized community activities designed to get to know people in unique ways. This stretches our thinking and requires us to reconceptualize assessment altogether. Discovery is a person-centered planning approach to getting to know job seekers in a very individualized way by spending time in community places, doing things together that reveals each job seeker's interests, activities he/she is engaged in, tasks, skills, personal attributes, and conditions of employment. As you will learn in a future session in this course, discovery reveals three distinct vocational themes of the job seeker that informs employment development. These themes are not job descriptions, job titles, or businesses that describe an ideal job for a job seeker. A vocational theme is an overarching word or phrase that contains many jobs in that theme. The components of DPG include creating a positive personal profile of the job seeker, learning about their skills and ideal conditions of employment, and using these and the 3 vocational themes as the roadmap for employment. Discovery also involves setting financial goals. How much do you need to earn? This includes a request for a benefits analysis for those job seekers who receive SSI and SSDI as a very important aspect of the process, not only to assist individuals in understanding the impact job earnings may have on their benefits, but to ensure that individuals' customized employment support team understands and considers all Social Security work incentives available to the job seeker in considering customized employment. The process of discovery is guided by and recorded using a discovery staging record, DSR. Evaluations that are performed in unnatural or segregated settings don't provide much useful information. People often do not understand what they're being tested on. The testing is but a brief snapshot of time and doesn't assess the person doing what they are good at or interested in. Many of the unpaid work experiences support stereotypes about people with disabilities and the jobs they can do, like janitorial work, recycling, document imaging, and cleaning. Discovery is a functional assessment. It implies that you don't know the answers, but instead that you are on a quest to learn them. You must be open to learning and finding out new things and ideas. Discovery is a planful approach that is not random and does not use prearranged assessment sites or activities. The discovery staging record lays out the steps in a logical order that, when followed, produce quality employment options. Discovery implies that you are open to finding opportunities and new directions along the way. This requires an inquisitive mind that will explore options as they are discovered. This also leads to innovative approaches and negotiations that include self-employment, among other potential employment possibilities. This image illustrates the conventional ways that assessment and vocational evaluation have been done. At the top of the funnel are pieces of information that are learned through normed reference tests and standardized approaches. The result of these are funneled down to a vocational goal that can be typically stated in the form of a job title that can be found in the Dictionary of Occupational Titles or a specific industry. Discovery flips the funnel. It starts with the basic question, who are you? In other words, the first objective is to learn as much as possible about the individual job seeker and then take that information to uncover almost limitless possibilities. One distinction might be that the conventional methods are an effort to be certain about a job goal, whereas the discovery approach leads to a multitude of employment possibilities, but based on very specific information about a job seeker's vocational themes. This graphic represents the elements of vocational themes and the work that is completed in discovering personal genius. You will learn about this in greater detail in the next lesson of the course. Another significant distinction between customized employment methods and others is in the approach to job development. As you can see, we think of it more as cultivating as opposed to developing. The idea of discovery permeates the job development process. We take an approach called casual job development. Instead of scanning the want ads and internet postings to seek job openings, employment consultants identify businesses where the themes and conditions of employment that were revealed during discovery exist. Then it's about connecting the job seeker and the businesses. For each theme, the employment consultant will develop a list of 20 community businesses where that theme is present or valued. The employment specialist connects the job seeker and the businesses based upon an informational meeting to get advice from the employer or manager rather than asking for jobs. This phase will be discussed in greater detail in the session on job development. Most conventional job development practices are rooted in a sales and marketing approach. That approach requires a job developer to sell 4 things during the process. First, the job developer must sell him or herself to the prospect. Second, you must sell your organization and what you do. Because the organization has a disability focus, the third sale is about disability. The fourth part would be selling the job seeker. Customized employment eschews the first 3 things and focuses completely on the job seeker. They are the primary reason you connected with the business in the first place. As stated earlier, discovery, or discovering personal genius, is a unique form of community-based functional assessment that reveals vocational themes. These themes are not job descriptions, but contain many jobs. For example, someone with a transportation theme might pursue work in a garage, in an auto body or paint shop, a bus station, a school, or a railroad yard. Connecting employers with job seekers sharing similar themes is one way to make personal-professional connections. Combining themes strengthens the job development effort and adds more options to the job search. For example, when one combines the themes of transportation and art, it could lead to customized auto painting, graphic design, or advertising possibilities. Circumventing the human resource functions can be important because the typical application interview process can exclude people with disabilities who do not often do well in this competitive system. Connecting with the employer directly is best, and it's easier in the small businesses that dominate our communities. There are about 11 million businesses with fewer than 20 employees in the U.S., and only about 40,000 with more than 500 employees. Employers hire people who generate their wages through increased sales or enhanced efficiencies, which boost profits. Wages are the residue of profits. The task of job development is to illustrate how hiring someone improves the company in terms of processes, sales, customer service, or other attributes that over time increase profitability. In customized employment, we showcase an individual's skills and abilities to a business owner or manager who shares similar vocational interests and themes with the job seeker. In this way, we can start to develop a relationship between the job seeker and an employer where we find ways in which a future employment relationship can meet the needs of both. Despite the fact that customized employment does not follow a sales and marketing approach, good sales practices are still important tools in the job developer's arsenal. For instance, you still need to know when and how to make a proposal and how to close the deal. The difference is that you are not leading off by trying to sell anybody anything. You are gathering information and developing relationships that may lead to employment opportunities. Employment specialists must be good at managing their time, understanding their services, and representing job seekers in a respectful manner. In essence, the distinction between a customized employment approach and the conventional sales and marketing approach to job development can be summed up in these 2 simple rules. Rule number 1, the focus must always be on the individual job seeker. Rule number 2, never break rule number 1. These are the tools and practices that help uncover the jobs behind the jobs. Conventional job development is an above-the-iceberg approach. In customized employment, we are looking below the surface of the iceberg where there is much more opportunity. Using the positive profile developed in Discovery, employing vocational themes to guide job development, and informational interviews as the entree to job development all work to identify employment opportunities that are not apparent in more conventional job development practices using a sales approach. In customized employment, we look to develop jobs up the supply chain, where businesses do business with each other, as well as down the supply chain, to the customers of the business. We know that small and medium-sized businesses are growing and provide greater opportunity, especially in the artisanal businesses that are devoted to making and creating things. We also understand the importance of social capital in the lives of job seekers we support. Social capital refers to the reciprocal interactions and relationships among people. It's about who you know, and who knows you, and how one contributes to the welfare of the community. The development and use of social capital is a necessary component of an employment specialist's job description and skill set. The third phase in customized employment again relies on the foundation of good discovery to plan for and to deliver the services and supports to learn a job, to improve and enhance performance, and to ensure good working relationships with coworkers. Most typical employment supports are required on the job, like learning job duties, developing coworker supports, adaptations to ensure successful work performance, and others. But planning for supports can also be off the job. It may include transportation, maintenance of work clothing, banking, and reporting income to Social Security. Ask job seekers to identify other supports they may need. You will learn more about employment supports, and in particular systematic instruction, in greater detail in a future session. These are some of the most common employment supports. Discovery will help identify many of the support needs prior to employment because the job will have been found because it met the themes and ideal conditions of employment. In many cases, this reduces the amount of agency support, like job coaches, etc. The final phase of customized employment is about ongoing support and career development. Very few jobs last forever, so customized employment continues the process of discovery throughout. Ongoing support and consultation at the worksite, as well as continued learning about the needs of the employee, the business, and the changes occurring in the needs of the employee and his or her life, are an integral part of customized employment. At every juncture, information that is learned is added to the individual's vocational profile and is used to plan for job supports, increasing responsibilities, raises, changes in income needs, anything that requires action on the part of the employment specialist to assist with support, training, or career development. This would include instructional strategies that are most effective, environmental conditions that should be considered, career goals, ideas to learn new skills, and such. Customized employment is a dynamic process that changes the role of the employment specialist as new information is learned. These are some of the possible employment outcomes that result from the practices used in customized employment. As we previously discussed, all jobs are negotiated in one form or another. In many instances, a job is created when a business owner meets a job seeker and believes that person will contribute to his or her business. Carving is the practice of peeling off particular tasks and responsibilities from one or more jobs to create a new job, and is of economic advantage to the business to do so. Resource ownership is a situation where negotiation resulted in the new hire bringing a tangible resource to a business, like a computerized sewing machine, that the new employee uses to perform his or her job. It comes from a need that an employer has, will generate new customers or provide a new product or service, and generate new profits for the employer. In most cases, it is a resource that the business may not be able to afford. Self-employment is also a viable option, but only if it is the result of good discovery. Regardless of which of these outcomes is developed, the key is negotiation, or finding the best fit that makes the most sense for the job seeker and the business. You will learn more about these employment outcomes in more detail later in the course. Become informed on the national and your state's laws, rules, and regulations on employment of people with disabilities and how they impact the services you may deliver in your community. The unemployment rate of people with disabilities is abysmal. The opportunities for people with more significant disabilities to be in regular jobs in the community is even more so. But there is hope that with new federal laws and state regulations that guide the delivery of publicly funded services, we will see an increase in the number of people accessing better programs that help people find community employment, and that those services and programs actually result in real jobs for real pay in the community alongside other citizens who do not have disabilities. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, final rule highlights increased focus on youth with disabilities. It expands vocational rehabilitation services to students and youth with disabilities and ensures they have meaningful opportunities to receive the VR services they need to achieve competitive integrated employment. It strengthens the VR program's focus on competitive integrated employment for all VR recipients, including individuals with the most significant disabilities. The guiding principle of the VR program under WIOA is that individuals with disabilities, including those with the most significant disabilities, are capable of achieving high-quality, competitive, integrated employment when provided the necessary services and supports. To increase the employment of individuals with disabilities in the competitive integrated labor market, the workforce system must provide individuals with disabilities opportunities to participate in job-driven training and pursue high-quality employment outcomes. The VR program enhances access to services, including VR services, for individuals with disabilities seeking or continuing employment at sub-minimum wages with entities holding special wage certificates under Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act, enabling them to achieve competitive integrated employment. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, published its final rule related to home and community-based services settings, HCBS, for Medicaid-funded long-term services and supports provided in non-institutional residential settings. Many services that your agency provides may be funded through Medicaid waivers. This rule implements a number of changes to home and community-based waivers and imposes new requirements on what is considered an appropriate community-based residential setting. The new rule does not mandate that sheltered workshops close. However, it does require that workshops meet a specific set of standards and dictate where services reimbursed by Medicaid can be provided. Medicaid funds cannot be used to pay for employment or vocational services in a sheltered workshop. Medicaid funding can be used to pay for pre-vocational services in a sheltered workshop, but only if the services are time-limited and intended to help prepare the person to work in an integrated setting. It is important to note that even in those situations, there is an expectation that people are engaged in the greater community rather than being isolated in a sheltered workshop. It is also important to understand that the impact of the HCBS settings rule on Medicaid reimbursement of services in a sheltered employment setting is not new. In 2011, CMS issued guidance to states which made it clear that Medicaid waiver funding could not be used to pay for vocational services, i.e. employment services, in a sheltered employment setting. The 2011 guidance also said Medicaid payment for pre-vocational services in a sheltered setting must be time-limited and only to prepare a person to transition into employment in integrated settings. The remaining courses will cover the following topics: Discovery, a functional community-based assessment process; customizing job development, new and innovative approaches to finding the jobs behind the jobs and going where the career makes sense; interest-based negotiation, methods and processes for talking with employers and negotiating on behalf of job seekers; systematic instruction, time-tested techniques for breaking down tasks into teachable units that will help new employees become competent on the job. Social Security benefits and work incentives. Please visit our website and Facebook page for more information and resources. Thank you.